Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Tomcat Stitchery. I'm Whitney and I have got a sew-along for you all. This is the sew-along for the Cashmerette Club pattern, the Vinton pants or trousers, depending on where you are in the world. This is a lovely little twist on the cargo slash workwear type of pant that we are seeing everywhere right now. It features a lot top stitched seams. There's a seam down center front, center back, leg, a barrel leg shape, which is also really fun, hem facings, a waist facing, which is actually my favorite way to finish off the top of pants and skirts, some really cute pocket details, and a zipper fly. So we are going to be going over exactly how to sew this pattern from start to finish. Now, we're going to go over the supplies here in just a second. When I go over the pattern pieces you need to have cut out, but as far as fabric, I am using a cotton twill that I purchased. Cotton twill, cotton duck, cotton canvas, any cotton poly blends, denim, all work well for this pattern. You want something with a little bit of structure just so you can really get the effect of that barrel type leg, that shaped leg. I will be sewing today on this loaned to me Bernina 790 Plus from the University of Sewing. Thank you, University of Sewing, for lending me this beautiful machine. And we will be also using a medium weight interfacing. I am using the interfacing from the medium weight from Palmer Pletch. And I will leave that all linked down in the description box, including any other accessories and or sewing notions that I'm using for this project. Okay, let's head over to the cutting table and take a look at our pattern pieces and the rest of the supplies that we're going to need for this project, and then we're going to start sewing. All right, so let's take a look at all of the pattern pieces that we're going to need for this pattern and anything that I want to note on preparations for each of the pattern pieces, such as interfacing, notches, that sort of thing. So our first piece is 1A or B. This depends on if you are making the standard bum or the full bum. I'm doing the standard bum, so I've got 1A, which is my side back. You do want to make sure that you are marking your pocket spot here. You just need it on one side, but instead of doing the mental gymnastics to figure out which side that is when I'm marking, I just mark both sides. I mark it on the wrong side. I did use a friction pen. It may be kind of hard to see because my fabric is a little dark. It is right there. I'll highlight it better when we get to the point of, so that you can see it on camera better when we are actually putting that back pocket on. But we do need to make sure we mark that. Make sure you're marking all of your notches. This is very important. And remember, if you've taped your pattern together, sometimes those notches can be, I don't trim my pages. I just line them up with the grid. So sometimes those notches can get in between layers. So just make sure you're marking all your notches, including, it's not on this piece, but on the next one, any notches at the hem, because this is a barrel-legged pant that has a hem facing. So there is 1A, the side back. We need 2 of those. We need 2 of center back. This is 2A, again, because I'm doing the standard bum. There's also a notch. You're not going to be able to see it on my paper, but it's under, because it's underneath that layer, like I said, but I have marked it. This is the second little spot for your pocket. Make sure you mark all your notches. You'll need 2 of these, and I have marked that pocket placement again on the wrong side. It's going to be hard for you to see, but I can see it, and I'll make sure that you can see that when we get to that point. This piece does have the notches at the hem, so make sure those get made. That'll be important later. All your notches are important. Then we need piece 3, which is your back pocket. You only need 1 of these, and you also need to cut out your piece, just interfacing 1, which is just a piece that you cut out of just the interfacing, and go ahead and fuse that to the top of the pocket. Make sure you mark those notches on that pocket piece though, so we know where to fold things over when the time comes. I am using white interfacing for this project just so you can easily see. If I were making these for myself, I probably would use black because this kind of wine color is darker. So I would have used black had I just been making these for myself. But I'm using white for this project just so you can see what I am doing. So that has been fused. And then we've got piece 4, which is the side front. This is got your little pocket slash here. Mark all of those notches. And you need 2 of those. Oh, your back pocket piece, piece 3, you just need 1. Can't remember if I said that. Okay, next is your center front. This does have a notch here at the hem that you want to make sure that you get. Also, you're going to want to make sure that you mark here at the bottom of the fly and here at the zip stop marking. There is a notch here as well. And then I have also marked that end dot. Again, you're not going to be able to see it right now, but when we get to this point, I will be marking a straight line, mimicking this, a straight line from that notch to that mark that I have made. So you will be able to see that when we get to sewing the zipper, but it's important to make note of that. And also where we need to stop sewing our zipper here, mark your notches as well. And this is piece 5. All right, piece 6, pocket flap. We need 4 of these, and on 2 of those, so we need 2 that are not interfaced, just regular fabric, and then 2 that are interfaced. So we'll be sewing 1 interfaced one to 1 non-interfaced one before we sew those onto the pants. So you just need 4 of those, 2 of which are interfaced. I've used just a regular medium weight interfacing for this. And like I mentioned, this is a cotton twill fabric. Lighter weight than denim, but still a bottom weight fabric. I have marked where my snaps are going to go, but I'll just remark these once these are sewn to put my snaps in, and we'll do that together. All right, piece 7 is your top pocket pieces. You need 2 of these, and you want these in a quilting cotton. I've used this stripe, right side, wrong side. So you've got 2 mirrored images of that. Make sure you mark those notches. And then next, we have got our lower pocket. So this gets cut out in the same fabric as the back of your pants because this will be seen on the pocket will kind of come here. So this will be seen from the right side of the pants. So you want to use regular fabric for this pattern piece. This is piece 8. And again, make sure you mark those notches. Piece 9 is your fly facing. Okay, this one gets a little tricky because we need to interface one side, but you want to make sure you interface the correct one. So you cut 2 of these out. You want to interface this one. So see how the piece that goes this way, you want the interfacing on the back. This is the wrong side, but you want to make sure that you have it orientated the correct way because another pair of pants that I was making, I wasn't really paying attention to that, interfaced one of the backs, and then had to flip my fly around. I had to do it the opposite way that the pattern, instead of right over left, I had to make mine left over right, or vice versa. I can't remember. Anyway, so you want the interface piece to be this one. This is the back of the interface piece. The other one does not need interfacing. So 2 of those, 1 of interfacing. And that is clearly shown in the instructions. You just want to make sure you pay attention to that. We need 1 of piece 10, which is our belt loop. Belt loops. We will sew those and then cut that out. We need 2 of our back waist facings. These do not get interfaced because elastic goes into the back, so we do not want interfacing on these. So I've got 2 of these. Make sure you mark those notches. This is piece 11. Also make sure there's an 11A and 11B depending on which bum you're using. If you're using standard bum, which I am, it's 11A. If you're using the full one, it is 11B. And then we need 2 of the front waist facing. We need 2 of these in fabric, and then we do need 2 of these in interfacing. Okay, mark your notches. And then we need 1 of piece 13. This is our hem facing, or front hem facing. Make sure you cut that notch down here because that's going to come important when we're sewing those to the pants. And then we need 2 of those. And then we need 2 of our back hem facings. No interfacing on either of these. Also make sure you mark those notches so that we can easily make sure that those are lining up properly. And then finally, you're going to have your top stitch, your fly top stitch template. This doesn't get cut out of anything, but we will be using this to kind of mark where we want to sew our top stitching line when we put our fly in, our zip fly. So you do want to have this at the ready as well. And then finally, we are going to need some notions. We are going to need I like a Microtex needle. It's my favorite. I'm actually using a Microtex size 16 for this project, but you can also use a jeans needle depending on how thick your fabric is. And then we're going to need regular thread. I'm actually using a highly contrasting thread, as you can tell. I'm using the Gutermann Sew All, which is the same as the Gutermann Mara 100. But I'm using a hot pink so that you can easily see what I'm doing as I am sewing. We are going to need a jeans button. So I've got 1/2 inch jeans button right here. And you're going to want to weigh, you can install these with hammers. I'm going to be using a hand press to do mine. But here is the jeans button, and it should have a little tack that goes into the back. Again, it can be put on with a hammer. I'm just using a press because that's what I've got. But need one of those, 1/2 inch or near a 1/2 inch. If it's a little bigger, it's not too bad. And then we need one zipper. You need at least a 9-inch zipper. I've got a 16-inch zipper here in that hot pink, so you can easily see what I'm doing. I'm using just the nylon or polyester zipper. You can use a metal zipper like a jean zipper, especially if you're using denim. You will have to actually remove the teeth, though, when we get to that point. If you're using a nylon zipper or a polyester zipper, you can sew over the teeth so you don't have to remove those teeth. But any excess of this gets cut off. So you want just at least a 9-inch zipper for the project. But if you've got a little bit longer or a lot longer, that's okay, too. And then we need 1-inch wide elastic, non-roll elastic. This is going to go into the back of our pants. So we need 1-inch wide elastic. We'll cut that when we get ready for that part of the sewing. And then you need 4 snaps, but just the top portions. These are going to be non-functioning snaps. Again, I'm going to be using my little snap press, but basically we just need the cap. So the part that you see from the right side, and then the corresponding part to that, which in these snaps, and I think most, it's the female side of the snap, which is a little bit of a waste, but you do have to have the back on it, otherwise they'll just come out of your fabric. But this actually will be tacking the pocket flap to the front of the pants because these are going to be non-functioning. So you just need 4 of those, 2 for each side. And some sort of a snap setting tool. This little kit that I've got here has a snap setting tool that comes with it, like a little awl and stuff. So you can put those on with, and then you just need a hammer. I'll be using a hand press because that's what I've got and it's a little bit easier. But you can use just the little tool that comes with the snaps and a hammer as well. Okay. Other than that, we need a buttonhole foot and a zipper foot for when we're doing our buttonholes, obviously, in our zippers. Some sort of a marking pen, whether that's tailor's chalk or, the friction, like washable markers, whatever is your favorite. Some sort of a tailor's ham or rolled up towel for our pressing. And then a buttonhole chisel or X-Acto knife just to cut open that buttonhole. I use a buttonhole chisel, and we'll get to that when we get there. Something that can be used as a point turner. I just use a double-ended DPN, which is a double-pointed knitting needle, but a chopstick works. A pencil, a pencil that hasn't been sharpened works pretty well as well. And then, again, your snap setting tool so that you can set your snaps. And that is everything that we need. So let's head over to the sewing machine and let's get started sewing. All right, so the first step, we're going to be working on the back of our pants. So first thing we're going to be doing is sewing our center back to our side back. So we should have one A or B and piece 2, A or B, depending on if you're using the full bum or the standard bum. So I have got my pieces here. Now it's important to note, we are sewing, because our side back, it kind of looks the same on both sides here. We are sewing the side with 2 notches to the longer. So you've got the inseam here on center back. That's kind of easy to tell, but to this longer seam here. So there's 2 notches on here. And now we are just matching up the side with the 2 notches on our side back. This is right sides together, and I'm just matching up my double notches here. I'm going to put a pin. There should be 2 spots with that double notch. You can pin this all the way down if you would like. I just stick a pin at each notch and then at the top and the bottom, but use as many pins as makes you comfortable. All right. Now we're ready to go over to the machine and sew this seam. We are using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So let's go over to the machine and sew this up. All right, so I'm starting at the waist. We're starting at the waist and sewing down to the hem, again, at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I am using contrasting thread so you can see what I'm doing. I would suggest you use matching tops, and matching thread, unless you really want to make a statement. That's completely up to you. All right, let's sew the seam. All right, now that that seam is sewn, you want to finish your seam. And if you just have a sewing machine, there's a couple ways you can do that. You can sew another seam like 1/4 inch away and then trim really close to that second seam line. You can use a zigzag stitch to finish off this seam allowance, or you can use a serger, which is what I'll be doing. So however you'd like to finish off your seam allowances, go ahead and do that now. And then we are going to press our seam allowance, go to the pressing station, and we're pressing that towards the side back. So our center back's the one that has the crotch curve in it. We're going to press the seam towards our side back. And then I will meet you back here to do some top stitching. All right, once we have finished our seam allowance, again, I've used a serger white thread so you can see what I'm doing. Once we finish that off, I've pressed the seam towards the side, which is this side. This side on the left is center back. So once we have our seam all nice and pressed towards the side back, we're going to top stitch it, and we want to top stitch it about 1/4 inch away from that seam line. I like to put my hands on either side and just kind of, even though we've pressed it, just give it a little bit of a, I'm not pulling hard, but just a little bit of a tug, just so it lays nice and flat. So we're just going to sew all along this seam 1/4 inch away from that previous seam line. And I'm just gently easing that seam apart. Your seam allowance should be, because you pressed it, should be going towards that side piece. Now, real quick before we move on, how did I know that I was sewing about 1/4 inch away? I was lining up my seam line to the side of the window of my presser foot. So just find a good spot where you can keep that just a real nice and consistent top stitching. All right, we're going to be working on the pocket next. So let's get piece 3 out, the pocket piece, so we can work on that next. Okay, I got a little ahead of myself. We've got to sew our center back seam first before we do our pocket. All right, so we've got our, let's see, this is our left side when worn back piece. And we're going to put our right side when worn on top. Here at this back crotch curve, we're going to pin accordingly. And we've got a notch we can match. All right, so I'm just going to sew this seam at 1/2 inch, finish it, and then I'll meet you at the pressing station, and we're going to give it a good press before we top stitch. So go ahead and sew your seam here at 1/2 inch, finish it off, and then I'll meet you at the pressing station. All right, so I've sewn that seam. I finished it off with the serger. Now let's go give this a good press. All right, so we are here at the pressing station. I'm just a couple of stray threads here. I'm just gonna cleaning up here. Okay, so this is our center back seam right here. I've got a ham, or you could use rolled up towel with some newspaper, that kind of thing. It just helps because we're going to be pressing over a curve. Now we want to press this seam allowance towards the right side when worn. So if I were to take this and put this on my booty, this is the right side of my pants. This would go on the right cheek. So I'm just going to give that a really good press. Now, the thicker your fabric, you may want to just kind of do little sections and then use your hand to even press that down. That works out really, really well. But we're just going to go all the way down, spreading those apart as we go. Trying to do more pressing, which is like an up and down motion, a little less ironing, although sometimes that ironing motion just happens. And then we can go from the right side and make sure that it's pressed nice and flat from the right side. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch this down. Top stitch that seam allowance basically over here to this right side. So let's go do that. Just like with our other top stitching seams, we want to sew this at a quarter of an inch. And I am, just like with our other ones, just going to kind of gently make sure that that seam is staying open, especially when we get down into that curve. And there we go. Okay, now it is time to set these aside and to deal with our pocket for a minute before we attach it. All right, so now it is time to deal with our pocket. We're going to first prep the pocket piece, and then I'm going to show you a really cool trick for how to get this curved edge nice and neat so that it looks really professional before we sew it onto the back of the pants. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to, per the instructions, we're going to fold over the top of the edge of the fabric a quarter of an inch, which I always, measure this side. It's going to come up. And then this side. Oop. Give that a good press. Like so. And then we want to fold it at the notches, which are right there and right there. And give it another good press. A little piece of interfacing there. All right. Just like so. Now we're going to go to the machine and we're just going to top stitch this in place. And then I'm going to show you the cool trick for pressing. So let's go top stitch this top edge in place, and then we'll do the rest of the pressing. All right, so we've got our top edge here sewn down. This is the wrong side. Here's the right side. And now we're going to press up our the rest of our seams here so that we can top stitch onto the back of our pants. Now, curved pockets can be tricky. The pattern lists a couple of ideas of like basting in the edge so you can pull it tight to get that to turn over nicely to that 1/2 inch, but it can be really tricky. And this is my absolute favorite way. It does mention in the pattern that you can use a cardboard cutout or like a jig. I highly recommend this if you're going to make this pattern more than once, but also even if this is a pocket shape that you like that you may use on another pattern. It's great to have this. So the way that I made this, and you can use poster board, you can use cereal box if you want, but I basically cut out the traced out the pattern piece, and then I cut away that 1/2 inch seam allowance around these 3 areas. So you see it still matches up here at the top. It won't match up to the top of the pocket because we've already folded this edge down. You can trim that down if it is easier for you to see things. You could trim this off at the notches to where it, then would line up right there at the top of the pocket, but, up to you. So you are going to need your cardboard cutout of your pocket shape in like I said, poster board or like a cereal box, whatever. I'm going to set this aside now. This is actually a quilter's trick. And you want a piece of foil and then your pocket piece that we're going to be pressing. So the way we're going to layer this is we're going to layer foil and then we're going to layer pocket wrong side up. Okay, wrong side up. And then we want to put the cardboard cutout on top. And you can kind of eyeball it. You just want it in general 1/2 inch from all sides. Obviously, this finished template is the correct one because we already took off that 1/2 inch. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fold our foil over our piece of cardboard. And here at the bottom, keep your hand on the piece of cardboard so that nothing shifts. And I'm just kind of just generally going around the cardboard. I kind of probably trimmed the foil down a little bit more, made it a little bit more manageable, but this works. All right. And so you just want to make sure that that's nice and round all the way. It'll be a little thick here where we've already had that, that edge sewn. So you just want to make sure it's nice and as crisp as you can get it here at the edge of that cardboard. And now we're literally ironing on top of it. You could probably turn the steam off. In fact, I'll probably do that. Takes a minute. You don't really need the steam. I love this Oliso. It's nice that it sits up on its little feet when you're done using it, but sometimes I don't want it to. Careful, your foil will be hot. All right, once you've given it a really good press, see, it's nice when it pops up there. We can undo our foil. Pull out our cardboard. And now if we can slide our cardboard out, turn this right side up. I find this so much easier. Very gently fold all your edges under. And there we go. We have like a perfect pocket. So now we can go and hit this from the right side. And now your cardboard jig is reusable. You'll probably want a different piece of foil next time you do this, but there we go. Look at that beautiful round pocket. So now it is time to pin this to the back of the pants. So let me go get the pants and we will pin this in place. Okay, so we've got the back of our pants here that are almost finished. We just got to put the pocket on. Now I have marked here, remember we had those spots that we marked with our pen earlier. I have these marked on the wrong side. I just take a pen and stick it through there so I can easily see on the right side where those are. And we are putting the pocket, I mean, you could put the pocket on either side. It really doesn't matter. You could put pockets on both sides if you wanted. But the instructions have you putting it on the right side when worn. So that is this side. There's a lot of shaping, especially, I mean, I'm assuming if you've done the full bum, there's even more shaping through back here. So just kind of try and get that as flat as you can. And I'm just matching up my corners here with those pins that have come through the top layer. And now we are just going to pin this in place. Okay. And then we can take out the pins that we stuck in here to mark. All right, so now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we are going to sew this in place. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to start here in the corner. We're going to go up at an angle, go over, then sew all the way around the pocket, come over to the top a little bit, and then come back down to the stitch line. So we're creating two little like triangles in the corners that just really help anchor the pocket in place, and then you don't have it pulling away, a little added security right there. So let's go over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew these down together. All right, so I'm starting over here. This is the top of the pant, so I'm upside down at the moment. But I'm going to start right here and I'm just going to plant my needle right on the stitching line. About, I don't know, I'm about 1/8 of an inch in from the edge. Okay, so we're going to start sewing. And we're going to sew up to this folded edge. And then we're going to pick up, pivot. And I'm going to count my stitches over to this edge. 1, 2, 3. That's probably good. And I need, well, yeah, that's probably good. And we need to remember 3. Because we want to match that on the other side. I'm just going to trim this real quick. All right, so now we are heading down. Go kind of fast down the straightaways. And then slow down when we get to these curves. Especially if you're using contrasting thread like I am. All right, and then when we get up to this top fold, remember we did 3 stitches. So that's what we want to do on this side. We're going to go 3 stitches across the top there. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to sew back to where we're ending, right where this line intersects with this one. And then we'll backstitch there. All right. And there we go. We can pull our pins out. And we've got a really beautifully sewn pocket on the back of our pants with those triangles there to help keep that nice and anchored. All right, we are finished with our backs. Now we're going to move on to our fronts. All right, it's time to tackle the front of the pants. We're zipping right along here. So the first thing we need pieces 4 and piece 5. And I'm going to be showing you one leg, and then obviously you'll need to do the other side. But I'm going to move these pattern pieces, and we are sewing along this long seam here and here. This is the pocket edge here. So let's move our pattern pieces. Those are both wrong sides up. And then we are just going to match our notches here. Cashmerette's very good about putting notches in, so we really want to utilize those. Okay, so I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to sew this seam starting at the waist and sew all the way down to the hem with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then I'm going to finish it off. I'm using a serger, but however you're finishing off your seam allowances, and then I'll meet you right back here. All right, so we have sewn that seam and finished it. So just like we did with the back, I am going to press this seam allowance towards the side, which is with the angled pocket edge. Press that, give that a good press on the front or on the back, and then also the front. And then, just like we did on the back, I'm going to top stitch 1/4 of an inch away from the seam on the front, all the way down that seam line. So let's go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you back here, and we're going to tackle the pockets. All right, so my pants have been sewn here, and they've been all top stitched, oops, nice and easily. And now we are going to work on our the little pocket flap that's going to be going here into this pocket area. So now we need piece 6, which is the pocket flap. And remember, we cut 4, and we interfaced 2 and left 2 uninterfaced. So we just need 1 interfaced piece and 1 non-interfaced piece, and we're going to put those right sides together like I've got them here. And you can pop some pins in if you would like. Like so. I'm actually going to set these out of the way for now. We don't need those for just a bit. Okay, so now we're going to go to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, starting here at the top, and we're going to sew all the way around and back. So let's go do that. All right, I want to sew that 1/2 inch seam allowance with that interface side up. So the uninterfaced side is against the feed dogs. And just go slow. All right, and now once we've got that sewn, we're going to trim this down to like 1/8 of an inch, so real small, all the way around. We're trimming away that seam allowance. Just like that. All right, let's go to the pressing table and get this turned right side out and pressed. All right, so here's our little pocket flap piece. I'm just taking this to turn it right side out and using the beauty of trimming that seam allowance down real well. So it's pretty easy to get that seam popped out. But I take my fingernail and just kind of run it along that seam to get it popped out the way we want. And I'm pressing it. The interface side is the side that is up. And then just giving that a good press. All right, now it's time to go top stitch all the way around this curve. Let's go do that. All right, so we're gonna top stitch at 1/4 of an inch. The interface side is up. Like so. Oh, sorry, hard to see. All right, now let's get this sewn onto the pant front. All right, so on your pocket edge, this is the pocket edge here. Yeah, there's the front of the pant. You've got 2 notches that you should have cut this pocket piece, and we want to make sure that the interface side is facing up. The uninterfaced side is against the pant. And we are just putting this in between those 2 notches. And I'm just going to pin this in place. Okay, so now I'm just going to go to the machine, and I'm going to sew this in place at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So let me do that real quick, and I'll be right back. All right, so we have stitched that in place at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance right there. Now we want to take piece 7, which is our top pocket, and this is the piece that we cut in quilting cotton. And we're just going to put that, I am using the right side as the right side, so we're going to put that right sides together, and that should fit really nicely, actually, along that whole edge. And we can put some pins in here. Like so. Okay, now I'm going to go to the machine, and I'm going to sew right through here at 1/2 of an inch seam allowance. And then I will come right back here. Okay. Now that we've sewn that seam, I'm going to trim it in half, the whole thing. And you will be trimming some of that pocket flap seam allowance that's in there. So it gets a little thick through there. All right, like so. So now the next thing we're going to do is we are going to understitch this seam here. So we are going to flip this pocket piece open like so. Keep our pocket flap against the pants. Give that kind of just a good, you can hit it with the iron if you want. I just kind of finger press it, but we're going to stitch just right on the inside of the pocket, not even an eighth, like a 1/16 of an inch, sewing this seam allowance to the back of the pocket. So let's go do that. Okay, so again, my pocket flap is to the left here. The pocket, what is this? The bottom pocket, the top pocket, sorry. The top pocket is to the right, and the seam allowance is going this way towards the pocket. So now we're gonna sew really close to that seam line, but on the top pocket piece. And I kind of use my hands to spread that seam just a little bit to make sure everything's lying nice and flat. All right. So now we're going to go to the pressing board and turn everything to the wrong side of the pant so then we can get the bottom pocket all put into place. So let's go do that next. All right, so here's what we've got so far. Here's the front of the pants. We've got our pocket flap here. We've got our top pocket that's kind of over here to the side. So now we're going to flip things. This is the right side. So now we're going to flip things to the wrong side, like so. We want this, I need to trim that thread. We want this pocket flap to be going out, away from that line. And then we can kind of just press this all flat. We want the edge of the pant rolling just a little bit to the inside. We want to be able to see that, in this case, that wine color peeking through. Just going to give it a good press. Like so, okay? Next, we want piece 8, which is our lower pocket. And we want to sew this right sides together. Let me twist this here so you can see. So here's my pocket, like so. We're going to be sewing them down this and then around this curve and through here. Right sides together. So I'm just lining up that lower pocket piece. And I'm going to pop some pins in. And then here. All right. All right, so now we're going to go back to the machine and just sewing through these 2 layers, we're going to sew down, pivot, and then sew along this curved edge to the side seam here. So let's go do that. All right, so again, we're starting at this top. I'm going to flip this to where the top pocket is up. And we're just going to sew at 1/2 inch. And I'm only sewing through those 2 pocket pieces, the top pocket and the lower pocket. When we get to the bottom here, we're going to pivot, pick up and pivot. All right, so there we go. The pocket pieces are connected at those 2 sides. I'm going to go to my serger and I'm going to finish off that seam that I just sewed, and then I will meet you back at the ironing board to do another press. All right, so here's the wrong side of the pants. So this should all be lying nice and flat because we, gave that a really good press before we sewed this down. So that should all be lying nice and flat. Still, my flap is going away from the pants. That's okay. So let's give it a really good press again. All right. Now I'm going, because we're going to baste, I'm going to pin up here at the top of the pant, the waist, through all layers, both the layers of that pocket plus the pants. And then the same here at the side seam. There's not much, just a little bit. Okay, if I flip this over. So I am going to just sew at like a 1/4 of an inch right here along the waist, basically basting this pocket in place, and then down here on the side at that 1/4 of an inch. So let me do that real quickly, and then I'll be right back. All right, so we've got, this is the front of our pants. We still have the flap going out. It won't be that way for too much longer, but we still want it that way. So now we've got it basted here at the side seam, and we've got it basted up here at the waist, so our pocket is all in place. So I'm just going to give it one final press and walk you through what we're going to be sewing next. All right, so now that we have this all sewn, we are going to actually be top stitching, and we'll be top stitching part of this pocket closed, leaving enough room for your hand. So I'm going to be starting at the bottom here and top stitching at a 1/4 of an inch all the way up here. So a 1/4 of an inch away from this folded edge until I'm a 1/4 of an inch inside this pocket, which is going to line up with my stitching here at this pocket flap. And then I'm going to start here at the same spot, a 1/4 of an inch in from this pocket, and top stitch all the way up to the front, which is essentially, it's going to close the top and the bottom part of this pocket, leaving only the area here at the pocket flap open. Okay, so let's go to the machine, and we're sewing through all layers up to this point, and then we'll back stitch, and then starting here and sew all the way up to this point. So let's go do that. All right, so we're top stitching this all into place at a 1/4 of an inch. And I'm sewing all the way up until I'm even with my stitching here on this pocket flap. And then I'm gonna start up here at that same point. And sew all the way up to the top. Trim stray threads. But that's what that looks like. And we've stitched through all layers here, but we've still got, I can still get into the pocket right here, okay? So let's go back to the sewing machine, or the pressing station, and we're gonna give this pocket flap the press that it needs to be going this way, okay? All right, so this is how things are looking. So now we are just going to fold our pocket flap somewhat flush with that edge there. It's okay if it goes up and over a little bit, because we don't want any of that pocket, that top pocket, bleeding through. So once we have that pretty even with that folded over edge, we can give this a good press. Now, this will be fixed into place with those snaps, those basically faux snaps that we'll be putting in later. But what I like to do, now that this has been pressed, is I like to take a couple of pins, and I'm just pinning through the flap and through the top part of this pocket here, pinning that to the front of the pants. It's like setting your hair with curlers. You know, you've pressed it, and now I'm pinning it in place so that it will cool in the spot that I want it to. And again, we will be putting those snaps, but they won't be working snaps, to fix those, that flap just to the top part of the pant. We don't want to close our pocket up. Okay, but that's another step. So there we have it. Our front pockets are done. And I believe now we move on to the zipper fly, which is very exciting. See you there. All right, now it is time to do our fly. Yay. So we need our two pant fronts, which we're gonna need to do some marking on these, and I'll show you that here in just a second. And also gonna need your zipper. at least 9 inches long. Again, mine's 16 inches long. It's just what I've got. So, and I wanted to use a zipper that you can see easily. So I'm using a contrasting color. But yes, that's what we're going to need for these next few steps. So you can open up your zipper and set that aside for now. So we got to do just a couple of things before we get there. All right, so the first thing, if we're looking at our pants from the wrong side, our fronts from the wrong side, we need to mark a few lines. So when we cut out our pieces, we marked, and it's kind of hard to see the dot now because I've marked my line through it, but there's a little dot that's right here at the base kind of the fly. We need to make a line, a straight line, just with a ruler or straight edge from the notch that's up here at the top of the waist down straight through to that dot. Okay. And then we also cut a notch. This is where the zipper is going to stop here in the fly. And there was a dot that also went back over to this line that we needed to mark as well. So we need to make a line, and I've done mine in chalk so that you can easily see it, but you can use whatever marking tool you prefer, from that notch down to this point, and then from the notch here out to this line. And then on the right-hand side, we want to mark that stop line as well from the notch to that same point that we marked there with the pattern. Okay? So those are everything that we need. So once we have those marked, we're going to put these right sides together. Try not to knock off too much of my chalk here. And I'm just going to put some pins here, the bottom crotch. And then I'm just going to pin the front of the crotch here together, even though we're not going to be sewing way out here. Oops. It just helps to keep things together as we're moving around. You want to make sure that that little notch and those lines are matched up across the seam. All right, so this is what we're going to do, and we'll do this together. Once you have all of that pinned together, we are going to be starting here at the top with a basting stitch, and I'm going to be using a 5mm stitch. You can backstitch at the top if you want. I'm not going to, well, no, I probably will. And we're going to sew with a basting stitch all the way down until we get to our dot here, and then switch to our 2.5 or 2.2, whatever stitch length you're using. Switch back to that here, backstitch at this point, and then continue all the way down with the 1/2 inch seam allowance all to the end of, and I've gone off frame, all to the end of the crotch curve from there, okay? So let's go to the machine and let's sew that. All right, so I've got my stitch length at 5mm. We're just gonna start here at the top, and we're just following on the line that we drew all the way down. My machine automatically backstitches. I could turn that off, but that seems like more work than I wanted to. All right, so we're going all the way down, and then once we hit our little dot there, I'm going to go back, change my stitch length back to my 2.5. And I'm going to go forward 1, backward, and then forward again. Oh, right. And then finish it off at that 1/2 inch seam allowance until we get to the end of that curve. And then backstitch. All right, so we've got our regular stitch length here. I did some back stitching here, and then we've got a really long basting stitch that goes all the way up to the top of the pant. Even though we're going to be stopping our zipper at this point, this just helps. This will all be coming out, but it just helps to keep everything together. So now I can pull these pins out. All right, now what we're going to do is we want to clip from this point here up to that point where we were backstitched. Okay, so right, basically that little circle. So we're cutting up to, but not through that line up there, such as that. Okay, next we're going to go and we're going to press this part open and this part to one side. But before we do that, we need to finish these off. So however, oh, and look at that. Look how straight I got my line up. We need to finish off the edge separately, these two separately, and then finish these off together. So however you are finishing that off, if you're using a straight stitch, just a stitch closer, a zigzag stitch, serger, whatever it might be, go ahead and finish those off in 3 parts. So this one together, these 2 seam allowances together, and then serge off, and then these 2 separately. And then I'll meet you back at the pressing station to do our pressing. All right, so I have clipped my serging lines up here at the top and then down here where it went off the pant. But here where I finished, where we're getting up into that crotch point and on either end, I took those tails and tucked them back into the stitching. So that's just kind of helpful. All right, so now we're, I'm putting this over a ham. So my tailor's ham is down here, laying this over. We want to first make sure that those lines do match up. It says to redraw them if they don't. Mine match up really well, so I'm going to leave those. And we're just going to press this fly portion open. We don't want to lose our chalk lines. We do need to see those still. And then the bottom here, we want to press to the left when worn, which is also, you know, if you imagine these being on the front of your body, it's this way. This will get top stitched at a later stage. So we're just encouraging that to happen for later. All right. Now we need to get our zipper ready to go. All right, so again, I'm using a nylon zipper, way more zipper than I need, but this actually makes it sewing it in much easier. So we're going to be taking our zipper tape, and we're going to lay this down face down. So this is the front of my zipper. I'm putting it face down, and I'm lining this left edge up with that seam that we just pressed open. And then I am lining up the bottom of my tape, not my stop, but the bottom of my tape with the bottom of the fly here, okay? Just like so. Now, the instructions say to pin it down. I just find that pinning down zippers distorts the zipper tape, and it's not good. I'm not going to pin anything down. I'm literally just going to hold this while I'm sewing things. But if you want to keep things in place, my suggestion is to use some Wonder Tape, which is just a 1/4 inch wide Wonder Tape, and it's a double stick tape, and just running it along the side of your zipper here, so that when, and then taking the tape off and then pressing it down, and that will keep things all nice and flat in that area, okay? So we are going to, again, line this up, and then we're going to take, I'm showing this here to you so it's a little bit easier to see. We're going to pick up the fly portion, push the pants out of our way, so we are only dealing with the fly. We're only sewing through the fly and the zipper tape, okay? And that's how we're going to take this to the machine. And we're going to sew with our zipper foot from the line that I can see here that I created all the way down to the end of the zipper tape and back stitch at both spots. So that's what we're going to do. So let's go over to the machine and with our zipper feet on and get that sewn. All right, so I've got my zipper foot on, and I need to move my zipper, my needle over to the side. But before I do that, let's line up our pants. Again, remember we had it laying like flat, and then I'm going to pick this up. Those fronts go right sides together, basically, because I only want to be sewing through the pant, or through the fly and the zipper. All right, so even though we've lined up the left side of our tape with that seam line, we're actually sewing on the right side of the tape. So my zipper teeth are right here. So I'm just going to lower my presser foot. I've not moved my needle yet, and if I were to lower it, I would absolutely hit the actual foot. But now I want to move my needle as far as I can to the left. without, I don't want to hit the teeth. And I feel like that's probably pretty good. Maybe even just back over one. Okay. And I'm starting right at that line that I had marked. Okay. We're just going to sew down. Running that foot along those zipper teeth that are under there. All right, if you are, so now it's sewn on this right side. Now, if you are using metal teeth, this is where you now need to remove some of the teeth here because we will be tacking things down here in just a second to create a stop, which is actually really easy if you're using a polyester or nylon zipper. I'm gonna unzip it. But if you're using a metal zipper, you will have to go and remove your teeth and create a new stop. Okay, so what I've done is, sorry, you probably couldn't see that. Here's my tape. It's not sewn down from this point up. I'm literally just turning it a 90-degree angle at that line, and then there's some extra excess tape here, and I'm just kind of folding that down. So once we've done that, now we can just, basically we're basting it in place. And again, with a plastic, polyester zipper, you can leave this. You don't have to make a stop. This will act as the stop for a polyester or nylon zipper. Metal teeth, you got to remove those. All right, and now we can cut our tape flush with the edge of our fly piece here. Don't use good scissors to do that. And then we can just cut that piece off. All right, make sure obviously you want your pull to be down because you don't want to cut your pull off. All right, so now we are going to flip this over. Okay, so now, sorry, this is the wrong side up. Now we're going to take our zipper and flip it right side. So we're basically folding itself back on that tape. And now we are going to sew that into place. So I'm going to switch my needle to the right so I can now ride my needle or my foot down the teeth on the other side. But we're going to start up here at the top. And that should just naturally fold over. And then you may need to raise up that presser foot, pull that pull out of the way, all the way down. All right, like so. So we have done the stitching from the top all the way down. All right, now it's time to do the other side, and we'll go back over to the ironing board so you can easily see. All right, so this is what this looks like right now. We have one really long leg, one that's been basted down here. And this, if you were to press open your fly pieces here from the wrong side, this is what it's gonna look like, and we've top stitched that down in place, okay? So now it's time to do the other side. And you can see, I'm just barely tugging on this. Also, for some of the sizes, they will be underneath these fly pieces, which I think your pocket pieces, mine will be. So you just want to keep that in mind, that those are nice and flat when you're doing your top stitching and stuff. Anyway, we'll talk more about that later. But you can see that it's already wanting to flip to the other side, such as this, which is perfect because that's what we want. Don't worry about up there. So now we are going to come back, and I can see my line right here. You might be able to barely see it. I can still see it. And we are going to sew from that line all the way down on just the fly piece again. So I'm pulling that away. We'll start at the bottom and we're going to sew up to our line. So we'll start down here, sew up to our line to get that sewn into place. Okay, so let's go to the machine and sew our other side in. All right, so this time we're starting at the bottom of the zipper and going to work our way up. I've moved my needle back over to the left. Again, you can use that Wonder Tape to keep that all in line. And I'm just following the zipper tape with, or the teeth there with my presser foot. I'm going to be very careful when we get up here, because we are going up a ways, and I may try get that out of the way. Okay. And then when I get to that line, we'll backstitch there. So now we are backstitched on this area. Now the instructions at this point want you to sew, because it's a little bit, you know, loosey-goosey and free. So we can, let me trim some of these threads. Sew this again, but sew it just right on the edge to sew this zipper tape down, basically the same length. So, oops, I want to go back to the right, probably about there. Yeah, that's probably good. So then I can walk that zipper foot along those zipper teeth again, but this time I'm sewing on the far right side of the zipper tape. All right, and then the final step that we're gonna do here is that, again, if you are using a metal zipper, you may need to trim your teeth, pull those teeth out, but because we are not, I'm literally just taking the zipper tape and turning it until that zipper teeth are parallel with that line. And now I'm just going to baste that in place, like so. And then we can trim the teeth. Don't cut your pants. Again, gross zipper, or gross scissors. All right, and there we go. All right, so the next step is gonna be doing some top stitching. So let's go back to the ironing board and we're gonna pull out our top stitching template, and you're gonna need some chalk. And let's get this drawn in. All right, so right now it's just a flat seam from the right side, but I'm going to just, well, I'm gonna do a few things. I'm gonna make sure that my pocket is lying flat. Ouch, under there. Don't catch your finger on errant pins. Okay, I can feel my little zipper that's in there. All right, so we've got this template, which is the fly template. I'm also feeling here, and I can feel that my zipper stop is right here. It's not a bad idea to mark that with a pen just to be on the safe side, but I think we're going to be fine. So I'm just lining up this template with that seam. And then you can give yourself a little guideline. I honestly eyeball this. I mean, for the sake of the sew along, I will use the template, but I usually just eyeball it. But there we go. So now this is the line that we are going to top stitch, making sure everything is flat underneath. Make sure your pockets aren't turned up weird and that stuff. We'll do this together. And we are going to sew this line of top stitching down. So let's go back to the machine and do that. Okay, so now it's time to top stitch this fly piece. So we just want to make sure, again, some of the sizes, the pocket overlaps the fly extension a little bit. This, my size does, just a tad here at the top. So we just want to make sure that everything's flat. You should be able to feel your zipper stop or your zipper hole in there. And again, like I mentioned, your zipper stop like down here. We just want to be mindful of those. So we're going to go slow, but we do want to make sure everything is nice and flat. So now I'm just going to follow this line of stitching, or this chalk line. And I can hear that hitting where my zipper teeth went to the side there. Get a nice curve. And then we're gonna back stitch here when we're back to that seam. Like so. So there is that line of stitch. It literally just followed my chalk line. All right, now what I want to do is I want to top stitch this seam allowance down 1/4 of an inch from the seam all the way up and have it stop at that line of stitching. So I'm going to flip these pants around. And this is the same. I mean, we've just been top stitching everywhere, including that center back seam. So that's why we're doing this here. So I'm just going to start at the inseam basically. And we're just going to, making sure that that seam allowance is pushed to the left, which is this side. And then we're going to take it all the way up to my stitching line. Like so. See? Like so. Okay. Now it's time to put our fly shield into, or what are we calling this? The fly facings into place next. So I'll meet you back over at the ironing board. Okay, before we go any further, I forgot to tell you to take out your basting stitches now that we put in, that's here at the center front. You know, make sure that everything looks good here on the back and is lying flat. If you've got any, you know, any pocket pieces need to go up underneath your fly, you know, make sure that that is all good. Mine looks good, all nice and flat. So now, with a seam ripper, we can just go in and cut those basting stitches just like that. And now when it opens up, you can see your zipper. And then you can brush away your chalk, your extra threads, all that jazz. All right, so we can set the front of the pants to the side for a minute because we're going to work on this fly facing, okay? So now we need to grab a piece, what number are you? 9, which is the fly facing, and you should have cut 2 and fused interfacing to the back of one piece, just like this. So we're going to put these together, right sides together, and we're going to sew from the top all the way around this curve. And we're going to sew with our interfaced piece up. So we can pop just a couple of pins in. Like so. And you don't need to watch. This is very simple stitching. So I'm just going to sew here from the top all the way around this curve and stop. So I'm leaving this side open and the top is open. Okay, so let me go do that and I'll meet you right back here. All right, so hopefully you can see I've stitched that seam at 1/2 inch, and now we are going to cut that seam allowance at least in half. Get some of that, especially around that curve. Okay, so now we're going to turn this right side out. Maybe. If you want to get a real crisp long edge there, you can kind of press that open as far as you can. But we do want to press these wrong sides together. All right, now before we put this in the pants, we need to do one last thing. We need to finish off this long edge. So however you're doing that, I'm gonna use a serger, and I'm gonna start at the top, serge all the way off, tuck my tails back in here at the bottom. But again, however you're finishing off your seam allowances works. We just wanna make sure and close this up. So let me go serge this real quick, and then we will get this pinned into our pants. All right, so here we've got the front of the pants, obviously wrong side up. I'm just going to really quickly unzip this zipper all the way. So the zipper is completely unzipped, just gets things out of the way. But now we've got our finished fly facing piece, and we want to line up this line that we finished off with the edge of this this side of the fly. Okay, the right side when worn, and right side as we're looking at it right now. So I'm going to just pop a couple of pins, not through the entire pant, only through this piece and the fly. And I actually, when we go to sew this, and we'll do it together, I like to flip this out of the way and sew with the fly piece up, just so I'm not accidentally sewing through the front of the pants. Okay, so let's go back to the sewing machine, and we're literally just stitching this down, connecting it. And then we will use bar tacks to kind of keep it in place on the other side of the pant. So let's go over to the sewing machine and sew this down. Okay, so like I mentioned, I like to sew with the fly piece. So the fly facing, piece 9 is down against the feed dogs, just because I can see what I'm doing just a little bit better. And we just want to go down as far as we can without stitching something we didn't mean to. And I'm literally just stitching like right through the serging line here. All right, trim my threads. Okay, so now we're gonna go back to the front and do some bar tacking, but that's what it looks like, because now that it's all secured, it's looking nice from the right. All right, let's go back to the ironing board, and I'm gonna show you how to set this all up so we can do our bar tacks. All right. So there's our fly facing is in there nice and neat. We want to zip up our pants, obviously just as far up as they will go. And check from the back here. We want to make sure that everything is laying nice and flat. These pockets are just everywhere. You could also pop some pins in down here to keep those down if you wanted to. Okay, so we want to make sure that from the back here that everything is laying nice and flat. You know, your fly facing should be covering your zipper, which is what we want. And now, once we know that that's all nice and flat, flip it back over. Now we are going to do a bar tack. Now, my machine has a bar tack function on it, and most machines, even basic ones, do have that function. But if you don't, it's just a really not very wide and pretty dense zigzag stitch. So if you wanted to take it to like a, I don't know, maybe a 1 or a 1.5 width, and then like a 0.5 length, play around on some scrap until you've got it. But I'll just be using the bar tack stitch. And we're basically going to be sewing through the straight area right here at the base of the curve, or right here, right before it goes into the curve. And then right here at the bottom, we're going to do bar tacks. Okay, so let's go to the machine and do that now. All right, so I'm on a Bernina 790 plus. And my stitch is, bar tack stitch is 24, but I'm going to show you what it looks like really quickly. See, it's just a really dense little stitch, and it only goes for a short distance, okay? There's the tripod, sorry. Back to the tripod. All right, so that's what we're looking at. So we just want to make sure, again, all of our layers are laying nice and flat. I think we're good. Everything feels nice and flat. And I am just going to do the first bar tack here. Okay, that's really cool. That's the first time I've done the bar tack on this machine. And it does like a little box, and then it does the zigzag. Okay, impressed, Bernina, impressed. And then we're gonna turn it to where we're in the flat part here. And there's a little bar tack there. So that is gonna keep that fly facing now from flopping around on you inside your pants. And if we turn it to the wrong side real quick, you'll see that it is kept in place here at the bottom in these two spots. Okay, so there we have it. Fly is finished. All right, I will be back and we'll start putting our fronts and backs together. All right, we're very close to having try-on-able pair of pants. All right, so I've got my backs back over here, and here's my backs. Remember when we worked on these? There's my backs. So I'm just gonna lay these out sideways here so that I've got my side seam kind of up and free right here. And then I'm gonna lay my front on top of it. Like so, right sides together. And I'm just going to go and pin things in place. Matching my notches, always important. And we're just doing the side seams. We're not worrying about the inseam right now. That inside seam. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, and on both sides, I'm going to do both sides here at the same time. But I'm going to start at the waist, and I'm going to sew all the way down to the hem with my 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then I'm going to finish that seam allowance, however I've decided to finish it. And then on both sides. And then I'll meet you back here, and we're going to press our seams to the back, and then we'll talk about the next step. All right, so on both my side seams, I have sewn the pants together right side or front to back. At the side seams, right sides together. Finished them off with my serge. My inseam still completely open, and this is going to be important because we're going to be top stitching this outside seam, and we got to be able to get in there. So I am going to stick, this is my seam roll. Again, you can use rolled up newspaper wrapped in a towel as well, but I'm going to place it under here, and we are pressing our seams towards the back. So we're just going to give it a good press, pressing that towards the back all the way up, and we're going to do this on both sides. And then I will meet you over at the machine, and we are going to top stitch both of those seams to 1/4 inch away from the seam line. All right, so I've got my pants still inside out, okay? Because I want to sew this way. And we're going to top stitch these side seams. So my pants are inside out, but because we don't have that inseam sewn yet, this actually makes this pretty easy. And I am going to start at the waist, and I am going to sew 1/4 inch from that seam line. And just like I've done with all of my other top stitching, I just want to make sure that so my front is on this side and this is my back. So I want to make sure that my seam allowance is going towards the back, and I'm just gently pulling on that seam to make sure it's not folding over on itself. And I want to make sure that the seam allowance is going the correct way. And on this side, that means to the right. But when I do the other side, I'll want it going the other way. Oops. right there. All right, so there is one side. I'll pull it out just so you can see it. I mean, I may have even done that the hard way, going in the hole like that, because it's pretty open with the inseam not done, okay? So there we go. We've got that sewn to that side, and now I'm going to do the other side and top stitch the other side, and then I'll meet you back at the pressing station to talk about the next step. All right, so from the right side, I still have my pockets pinned. I could probably take those out, but it keeps them out of the way. I've got my side seams sewn. I've got them top stitched on both sides. So now, and they're top stitched with that seam allowance going towards the back. So now we want to turn these inside out again so that we can put our inseams together, right sides together. So now we are inside out. So I'm just going to put a pin here right at this crotch seam, matching up the seams. My top stitching will be on either side of the seam just to help. It keeps actually there from not being too much bulk there, which, I mean, no one's looking on that part of your body anyway to notice that that seam that top stitching is on opposite sides, and it's much more comfortable. And then I'm going to pin one leg here at the hem. There's a notch right there. And the same on the other side. There's a notch. And there's them. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the sewing machine, and starting at one hem, I'm going to sew all the way up the leg, around the crotch, all the way back down to the other hem in one continuous stitch line. And then I'm going to finish that seam and then press that seam to the front of the pants. And I will meet you back here. All right, we are ready for the next step. So you have on a try-onable pair of pants now. So we've got those side seams, like we said, done. That inseam is now done, pressed towards the front. It does not get top stitched. So we can go ahead and, actually, I'm gonna leave with these inside out. I think it's actually a little easier to put the belt loops on when it's inside out. So, but we can set the pants aside for right now, because now we're gonna work on the belt loops. All right, so now we need our pattern piece, which is piece 10, which are the belt loops. We should have one piece of these. And what we're going to do is we are going to fold this right sides together, fold our long sides, right sides together, like so. There's a pin. And we're going to sew down the long edge at 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way down. So I'm going to go do that real quick, and then I'll come back and we'll trim and get it all pressed. Okay, so once we have sewn that down at 1/2 inch, we're going to come back and we're going to trim it in half. So trim that to like 1/4 inch. Like so. All right, now we want to press this seam open. Now this can feel a little tricky. It really isn't. Basically what I'm doing is I'm going to kind of push it down to where this seam is like right in the middle. And yes, it doesn't need to be perfect. I am going to end up pressing like creases into the sides of this, but that's okay. What we want to focus on is that we are pressing that seam allowance open. Really good crease. All right, once we've pressed that seam open, we're going to turn it right side out. This is a loop turner right here. It's got like this little hook on the end and then this little hinging piece that's right there. Hopefully you can see that. You can, however you like to turn your loops, though, is fine. I like this little tool. So you want the little hingy piece to go down as it's going through the loop. And then once it comes out, we want to hook the hook here on, oops, sorry, hook the hook on the edge. And then I'm pushing that little hingy piece up. And I want it to get caught. Well, and then we're just going to pull it right side out. Like so. All right. And then once we have it right side out, we're going to center the seam in the middle. So this is going to be the back of the belt loop, but we just want to center that in the middle. And give it a really good press. Okay, so this seam now is going to become the back of the belt loop. So now I'm going to go to the sewing machine. These are nice thick belt loops, and I am going to sew a 1/4 inch away from each side, folded side of this long belt loop. So let me go do that, and then I'll be back and we can cut this into 5 pieces. All right, so now that we have it top stitched down, it's time to cut these into 5 separate strips. So these are each going to be, according to the instructions, 4 inches long. Before I start cutting, I just like to make sure. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that is correct. All right, so I'm just going to start here and measure, and I'm going to cut my first one at the 4 inches long, which is right here. Just cut it, and I use this then to measure. It's much easier. But I use the same one to do the measuring in case I make one just a little longer than need be. They aren't like getting continuously longer. Perfect. All right, so there we go. We've got 5 belt loops. So now let me grab my pants, and we're going to pin these in place so we can base them in place on the pants. All right, so I have my pants right side out because I thought it would make it easier to see what I'm doing. All right, so we're going to be putting our belt loops, and they're going to actually go wrong side down. Typically, when we are sewing belt loops, we do it the other way around because then they come up and go around a waistband. But these are faced pants, which means this is the top of the pant, and the facing will be tucking down into the inside of the pant. So we actually want the belt loops wrong side of the belt loop against the right side of the pant. So we want those belt loops face up. And we're going to take these first 2 belt loops, and we're going to match them up with the edge of the belt loop with the edge of the that center front seam. On both sides. I'm just pinning these through the front. And then on the back, flip them over. I'm going to put one, center it over the center back seam. Again, make sure that those are down. And then the last 2, I want to put them halfway. I mean, you can do what you want. You can put your belt loops where you want. If you wanted to line up the edge of your belt loop with the seam line of the center back, I actually think that kind of looks nice. Or you could center it. I think the instructions have you center it in between this back side panel. So in between the side seam and this one, which we can go ahead and do. Pop that into the center. So it's just kind of whatever, aesthetically, wherever you want to put those. And then we'll just make them the same so that they look symmetrical. All right. And then once these are pinned in place, now I'm just going to go around and I'm going to base these to the top of the pant at 1/4 inch seam allowance so that they're all set and in place for when we do our facing. So I'm going to go do that real quick, and then I'll come back here and we can start on our facings. All right, so now that we have our belt loops basted in place. These are going to be so cute when it's all like said and done. On the back and on the front, they're all basted in place. We're going to set these aside for a minute because we're going to be working on the facing. So we should have our 11A, because I'm using the standard bum, back facing that is not interfaced, because remember we're putting elastic in the back for some subtle shaping. And then we've got piece 12, which is the front facing, and that does get interfacing on both of those pieces. So let's set 12 aside for just a second. So on 11, A or B, doesn't matter which one, we have a double notch here at center back. We are going to put those right sides together. Pop a pin. And I'm going to sew this center back seam at that 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then I'll come back here and we'll press it open. All right, so I've sewn the back facing here at the back waist facing here at center back with those 2 notches. So now we're going to open it up and press that open. We don't need to finish these seam allowances because it will all be encased inside. Can I, oh, good gracious. All be encased inside the pants when all is said and done. There we go. All right, let's turn this right side out now. And now we're going to take piece 12, which is our front facing, and we are going to match our single notch over here to the sides. Those should match, and they do. Both sides. Again, the front is interfaced, the back is not, because it needs to be able to kind of gather up a little bit with that elastic. All right, now I'm going to sew both of those seams at 1/2 inch, and then I'll come back and we'll press those open. All right, so I sewed those together at the side seam, basically, from the front to the back. I'm going to press those seams open as well. And you'll notice I've sewn in a little guide stitch here, because our next step is to, if you look at our facing, you'll see that it curves. So you've got like a longer part and then the shorter part. We're going to fold up this longer part. This will be the inside of the pants that's going to get stitched down. So we want to finish that off. So I have sewn myself a guide at 1/2 inch, which is what we want to fold this up. I've actually gone just shy of 1/2 inch so that I can make sure that this stitching line is just on the wrong side. But it makes it really easy way to measure. So now I'm just going to press that long edge, the unnotched edge, to the wrong side. All right, so now we have that longer edge pressed to the wrong side. All right, so let's grab your pants and let's get this facing put into them. All right, now it's time to pin our facing to our top of our pant. So I do want to, I mean, you can unzip your zipper. I find that it's easier if you unzip the zipper. This is the left side when worn. And on this side, we are pinning our waistband, right sides together. We're matching the notch that's here in this front piece with the folded edge of this front, okay? So here on this side, it extends way past center front. And then we're gonna match my notches right there. Match our side seams. And center back. So just there. And then on the right side when worn, get these notches all lined up. This is going to extend your center front is going to extend just a 1/2 inch past the fly facing. Okay, so it should extend a 1/2 inch past. I like to put a pin here just where that fly is, because sometimes that likes to get caught up and get weird. Keep everything tacked down nicely. All right. Now, our final thing that we're going to do is we're going to wrap this seam allowance around to the wrong side. So, like I had mentioned, we want this facing extending past the fly facing by 1/2 inch. But now we are going to wrap it to the wrong side. I'm going to pull this pin out and now pin it. So it's wrapped like that, okay? On the other side, we have a lot of excess, so we need to trim that first. So we want to trim this to where it's just 1/2 inch past. I'm just eyeballing that. And now we're going to wrap it to the wrong side. Just like we did on the other side. Just like that. Okay? Now we're going to go to the machine, and with this folded, we're going to sew all the way around the waistline, sewing this folded around the edge. Okay? So let's all go to the machine. We'll do it together and sew this facing down. All right, so I'm sewing, I turned my pants inside out so that I could sew with the interfacing when we are with the interfacing. Obviously, when we get to the back facing, it's not interfaced. But again, this is wrapped around to the wrong side of the pant. And we are going to be sewing this at 1/2 inch. We're just going to go all the way around, making sure our raw edges are all lining up and that we are not sewing anything folded over on itself or anything like that. You'll also be sewing through those belt loops as you get to them. That's okay. You'll just notice some thickness. All right, so we've sewn that all the way down, all the way across. So now we are going to trim that thread. We're going to take our waistband and pull it away. And it'll, want to fold in on itself there. And we're going to understitch the facing to the seam allowance. So we're pulling the facing away from the pants and we are stitching the seam allowance, which is under here, up to the facing. So I'm going to be stitching about, I don't know, 1/16 of a way away from that seam line, but all the way around the pant because we're understitching. This just makes everything lie so nice and smoothly and lovely when we flip it and press it. You do want to make sure that your belt loops are still going towards the pant. Okay, now that that waistband or the facing has been understitched, we're ready to go over to the pressing table and get that all pressed down and get that finished up. So I will meet you guys back over there. Oh, also go ahead and cut your 1-inch elastic to the length that you need for your size. And yeah, see you back over at the pressing table. Okay, so we've got our pants here. This is from the wrong side, as you can tell. And here is that facing. And I've got my piece of elastic. For my size, I cut this a size 14. And what we're going to want to do is we want this to our elastic ends to extend a 1/2 inch past our side seam from our back facing into our front facing, which should mean that the cut edge of your elastic is matching up with the cut edge of your seam allowance because it's pressed open. So I'm just going to put this here and just kind of, you know, center it. And sometimes pins will go through there. And then the same thing on the other side. Matching that up with that raw edge of that seam allowance. And now what we're going to do is we are going to go over to the sewing machine and we are going to stitch in the ditch from the right side, sewing through the elastic. So let's go to the sewing machine and do that real quick. All right, so I kind of have my pen at an odd angle here, but just want to get this started. And the stitching in the ditch means I'm stitching right in that seam line. Keeping in mind, I am using a contrasting, try and pull that pin out. I am using a contrasting thread, which might show. But if you're using matching thread, you should be good. And maybe flip that pen to the right side. Okay, so I got off just a little bit. Also, my pen was in the way, so maybe flip that pen. But there we go. That's stitched down, stitched in the ditch. That's also going to be on the inside of your pants. So no one's going to see that anyway. So I think we're good to go. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. And then I'll meet you back at the pressing station because we're going to press the entire waistband facing to the inside of our pants. All right, so now it is time to press our facing to the inside of our pants. We want to make sure everything, especially that center front part, and I am going to pin perpendicular to my stitch line. And I will be, because I am going to stitch from the front, from the top, but I want my, I'm going to get my hand too. I want to be able to pull these pins out from the underneath as I go. All right, and then we want to pull our belt loops just out of the way, up and out of the way, because we don't want those to get in the way. So I'm just going to go around here, pin this in place, and as I go, I'm using glass head pins so that I can iron this as I go, or press this waist as I go. Now, you'll see our understitching here. We want that right side of the pant to roll over just slightly to the wrong side. That's how you know, and that's why we do the understitching. So let me just go around the whole edge of this pant, pinning and pressing as I go. All right, once you have pressed that facing to the wrong side, it can get a little tricky here where you're needing to like stretch the elastic as you go, but not unable to have it happen. But now it's time to stitch this down, to top stitch this facing down from the right-hand side. Again, keeping these belt loops up and out of the way. So let's go to the machine and let's top stitch our facing down. All right, so it's time to top stitch our facing down. I'm going to remove this first pin, making sure that that edge is all folded over nice and neat on itself. And I mean, you could hand base this in place first if you wanted to, especially because it does get a little tricky with the elastic kind of pulling at you there in the back. But I am just going to go very slowly here. And I can feel where the edge of that facing is, and I can see where my pins are. So I'll just pull those out as I get to them. And we're just going to go real slow all the way around the front of these pants. All right, so there we have it. Now you can go back, make sure that you caught it all, especially through that back waistband area where you were dealing with the elastic and pulling. And I think we're all, missed a little bit there. So I'll go back and unpick that and sew that down. But yeah, there we go. All right, facing is sewn down. So the last thing that we are going to do here is we are going, before we mess with our belt loops, is we're going to take our pants by the side seams and just kind of pull them taut. And we want to stitch in the ditch. This is center back right here. We just want to stitch in the ditch. This will get covered by that belt loop. So if it's not perfect, it's okay. Just so that that waist elastic doesn't get twisted. All right. Okay. So there we go. Our waistband facings are down. Next, we're going to work on our hem facings. All right. So we set our pants aside for a minute. We're going to work on these hem facings before we do anything else. So you should have 2 front hem facings and 2 back hem facings. So what I'm going to do is, you have got, these are actually upside down here, but you have got a notch, 1 notch on the front and 2 notches on the back. Excuse me. The side that has the, so as you can see, this side seam, the notch is closer to this side seam and the notches are closer to this side seam. These are the 2 side seams that need to match up. So I've got right sides together, like so, and then that will be right side together, and that is right side together. Okay, so just like so. So I am going to go and, honestly, let's just focus on one because you'll do the same thing with the other one. I'm going to go and sew at a 1/2 inch seam allowance this seam, and then I'll come back here and we will get it all pressed and stuff. All right, once I have sewn that, I'm going to trim that seam allowance in half to reduce some bulk, like so. Then we are going to press it open. Like so. And now we are going to sew the other 2 short ends together. And we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to sew the seam allowance, cut it in half, press that seam open, and then I'm going to sew a along this long edge, the longer edge, the non-notched edge. I'm going to sew a 1/2 inch guideline so we can turn it to the wrong side like we did with the waist facing. So let me do that, and I will be right back. Okay, so I basically sewed a loop, and then I stitched along the non-notch side, which is the longer of the sides, just shy of a 1/2 inch, because again, I want to turn this to where you can't see the stitching line on the wrong side. So now I'm just going to go all the way around, sewing that into place, or pressing it into place. All right. Okay. So once we've done that, it is now time to pin this to the leg of your pants. So I've got my pants here, and here is the hem of my pants. So now we just need to determine where my notches are. Here's the back. And remember, we marked notches in our pants when we were cutting them out. There's the single notch. There's the double notch. So I've got to figure out which leg this one goes into. Must be this one. And I'm putting this in right sides together, and I've got my pants inside out because I want to sew with the facing up. So I'm matching my double notches there. And then sides for inseam, actually. And then single notch. And then side seam. And then just a couple ends around the circumference. Like so. All right. Now we can go to the sewing machine and let's sew this hem facing onto our leg. All right. So let's get under here. And we're sewing this at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I'm sewing with the facing up. And it's right sides together with the pant leg. And I am making sure that my seam allowances are staying open. Aside from my inseam seam allowance that was just pressed, the other of my seam allowances on the pant leg have been top stitched down. So you should be good there. All right. Once you have gone around sewing the facing to the leg, we can now pull the facing out of the leg. And what are we going to do? You guessed it. We're going to understitch. So I'm just going to go around again and make sure that seam allowance should be going towards the facing. But we are just going to sew about a 1/16 of an inch away from that seam line on the facing, making sure that seam allowance is going towards the facing. So I've got my hands under there, making sure everything's behaving, but just go slow. All right. So now we have that understitch. Now it's time to turn this facing towards the wrong side of the pant. Let's go back to the, do this to the same thing to the other leg. And then I will meet you back at the pressing station so we can give this a good press, pin it in place so we can top stitch our hem. All right, so I've got my seam roll inside my pant leg here. Obviously this is the wrong side. My facing is going down. Now we are gonna push the facing up. Cuffing it, basically, on the inside. And just kind of roughly get it all stuffed up in there. And now, again, just like with the waist facing, we want just a little bit of the right side of the pant showing, just a little. And now I'm just going to, just like I did with the waistband, or the waist facing, we're going to go around and pin this up and in place. And I think I'm actually going to, well, I need to pin and press kind of at the same time. And also try not to pin through my seam roll. It's also helpful to stick your hand up under there. Get things to lay nice and flat. Okay, now once we've got that all nice and pinned, now we can go back to the sewing machine and sew, top stitch our hems in place. So I'll meet you back over at the sewing machine. All right, so we're back at the sewing machine, and my pants are still inside out. I've pinned the facing all the way down. I'm starting at the inseam And I'm just going to pull these pins out as I go. Just like with the waist facing, I can feel where that edge is. So we are just going to very slowly go around this hem. All right, so then it's just going around, making sure everything was caught. And you've got a nice, top stitched hem. So go ahead and do that with the other leg. And then I will come back here and we are gonna tackle those belt loops, finish off those belt loops. See you there. Okay, so we are getting basically to the finishing parts of these pants. We're going to do our belt loops next, and then it's buttonhole, and then doing our faux snaps. And then I think we're finished, which is very exciting. So for our belt loops, did I call those buttonholes? I meant belt loops. For our belt loops, I'm going to show you real quick what we're going to be doing, and then we'll go do it together at the sewing machine. But we're going to take the cut edge of the belt loop, come over to the front, line it up with the stitching line of our facing. We're going to sew at 1/4 inch, then trim that, and then bring this down and top stitch it in line with the line of stitching that's already there. Okay? So those are the steps that we're going to be doing on all of these. So let's go to the machine, and we're going to do one together, and then you can do the other 4 on your own. All right, so like I said, here is our, this is the right side of our pant. I have my pants inside out so I can work from the front and then just have the back behind here. So here is one of my belt loops. I'm going to take it, and I'm going to line up that cut edge of my belt loop with my stitching line here. And we are going to sew that at 1/4 inch. Now I would go around and do all 5 of these at once just for ease. But since I'm demonstrating. Okay, now we're going to come back and we're going to trim this very carefully as close to that stitching line as we can. Okay? You may not be able to get like super close, but I cut that probably in half. That's probably 1/8 inch. Then we're going to take the belt loop, push it down, and it should come down, I don't know, maybe 1/8 past that stitching line. And now, make sure that's all together. I'm just going to kind of stitch in line with that stitching line. Like so. And there we go. 1 belt loop down. So I'm going to go ahead and do this for the other 4. And then I'll meet you back at the pressing station and we're going to talk about buttonholes. All right, so it is time to do our buttonhole and button, and then we'll be doing our snaps, and that is everything. So I am going to be, I've marked a few things on my pants so that you can see them easily. Our buttonhole is meant to be on the left side when worn, so this side, 1/4 inch away from center front and about midway between the top of the pant and the stitching line per the instructions. So I've just marked this so you can kind of easily see what's happening here. So I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I'm going to do a button. This is not indicative of the size. I'm just going to do my my buttonhole function. I pick the size of the buttonhole depending on the size of the button, which is right here. This is my jeans tack button right here. There's the back of it. We'll be putting this in with a hammer. because I don't have a die for my press. And it's just a good way to show you how to do this with a hammer. It's really not hard. So let's first put in our buttonhole. So let's go over to the machine and I'll show you how my buttonhole works. It's different for all machines, but I'll show you how my button hole function works on my machine. All right, so first, this is my buttonhole foot. So first I'm just gonna measure my button in here. I wanna slide my little lever here depending on the size of my button. And I like to give it a little bit of wiggle room. So I'll probably go about there at about 2. And then I'm gonna, oops, hold on, I can't have my dual feed on. Put that on. Feed my thread through there. I've already selected the buttonhole stitch on my machine. So now I line up the window that is up here. I line up my markings that I made. Like so. And then I just start sewing until this point here reaches the little red dot that's up here. And then when that happens, I hit this button. And there you go. This is the thing I love most about this Bernina, or Berninas in general, is that they just do such beautiful buttonholes. So there's my buttonhole. I am going to use a chisel to cut this open, but she also suggests an X-Acto knife. I like a chisel because you can be real precise of just cutting it through a buttonhole chisel, so you don't accidentally cut your ends. I know people put a pin on each end and then try and open it up with a seam ripper or scissors. I have just cut all the way through buttonholes doing it that way. So I use a buttonhole chisel. So I'm just going to go really quickly, cut this open, and I'll meet you at the pressing station so that we can mark our button placement. All right, so I've got my buttonhole made here. Now, what we want to do is zip up our pants because we're going to mark where we want the button. So I am just going to take a pin and pop it through the button and I'm going through the left side of the buttonhole, and then you can just unbutton it. So that's where I want my button to go. So there's a couple of ways that you can do this. I like to use, this is a leather punch. I use it all the time you'll see me use it for my snaps here in a second, for my press, but I've used it even before I had my hand press. I just find that putting like the backs of rivets or like the tacks of these buttons so much easier than trying to shove an awl through. But if you don't have, one of these and awl does work, well, you'll just go in through that spot and just press the awl through the fabric to make a little hole for your button to go through. So I'm just gonna make a hole that I can see here. And I also know what size works well. All right, so once we have our hole, whether it's with an awl or with a punch of some sort, we can take our tack and put it through the back. That rhymes. And I make my holes a little snug just because I don't want things to like tear out later. There we go. Okay, so now we've got the tack that I've pushed through from the back. And the button itself is going to fit onto that, but we have to use a hammer or a press. So I'm just going to come at it from the back here. Make sure that that is in. And I kind of use your finger to kind of press it in a little bit. And then it's just, and you don't have to hammer it super hard. It really goes in there pretty easily. And now we have got our button. Wasn't that easy? Okay. Next, we're going to be doing our snaps. So let me get my snaps collected, and we'll get these affixed to the front of the pants as well. All right, so now it is time to attach just the top part of the snap, because again, these are not functioning, which will be the cap and the female side. So the fabric gets sandwiched in between those. And then typically you would have the post and the male side that then it would snap onto, but these are going to be non-functioning snaps. So I've first gone ahead and I have marked, and hopefully you can see, but I've marked on my pattern piece where I want these snaps to be. Now, if you stick your hand in your pocket, this is where this is going through. It is going to go through the flap and through the front of the pant here, and then through the top pocket, which is your quilting cotton pocket, but that's it. You need to be able to still put your hand into the pocket, so you don't want to go too deep. You're not going all the way through the bottom pocket as well. So when you have this all nice and laid out, you're either going to use your awl or, in our case, our punch, like so. And then I am going to push the cap through the top. Get that through this back side, like so. And then this piece goes on top of that post. And now we have to fix this in place. Now, this is a little set of snaps that I'm using, and it does come with a little setters here that you would put this little setter into the hole of that snap and then hammer it. And you would put this little awl on the back side and then just give it a good hammer to set that. But I'm just in love with my hand press. So that's what I'm going to use, which is this guy. So then, oops, wrong way. I'm just putting my snap in place and then setting it like so. Woo! Like so. And I'm going to do that on all 4 of the spots. And that's just basically fixing that flap down to the front of the pants. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do all 4, and then I'll meet you back here with our finished pants. And just like that, you have a finished pair of Vinton pants. These were a lot of fun to make. I cannot wait to, I kind of want to make them in another fabric as well. A really fun and different leg to add to your wardrobe, something a little different from a cargo pant or a jean, just to keep things exciting. So there we go. That is the sew along for the Cashmerette Vinton pants. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and I'm happy to answer those as soon as possible. Thanks, guys. And there we have it, our finished Vinton pants. I think that these were a relatively easy sew, considering all these lovely little details. Had a lot of fun with the front pockets sewing those up. Just a really lovely pair of pants. I now want to make one pair that doesn't have a contrasting thread that's quite so, not that there's anything wrong with it, I think it's kind of a fun look. I obviously had to do that for you guys, but I would like to make a pair that has a little bit more traditional type top stitching and maybe a denim. Anyway, really enjoyed sewing this pattern. As always, if you have any questions, leave them down below, and stay tuned on the channel for a full review of the pattern, and maybe I make up a second pair. So I will, and actually to see them on my body. So keep checking back on the channel. I will have a full pattern review over there. All right, thank you for joining along on this sew along. As always, leave any questions you have down below. I'll answer those as soon as possible. Happy sewing.